Hello there and welcome back to the Worship Podcast. I can't believe it's worship. I'm Lester Sim.
And I'm Lester Ong.
And once again, this is the Worship Podcast for amateurs by amateurs. In today's episode, we are going to be diving into talking about the Tabernacle and talking about the presence of God. But before we do that, we have come to the end of a few episodes where we have had special guests on the show, and I really enjoyed it, just gleaning insight from them, wisdom from them. And yeah, do you enjoy it too?
Oh, absolutely. I was listening back to our most recent episode with Siska about building the next generation of worshippers, and I realized you and I kept saying, wow, amazing.
Yes.
And I think I was just stunned by the information I was learning myself and the perspective I was getting from, as an example, Siska. So I felt that I've learned a lot in the process. I really enjoyed having Pastor Dan and Pastor Benny talk about the broader view of worship in the context of the church as well. And yeah, it's just been an amazing several sessions that we've had.
Yeah, and I think even also listening into Dave's insight into the practical tips as to how to actually run a worship ministry. I know some of you out there have actually told us that you've really enjoyed that. So yes, we know it has been a blessing to you. It has been a blessing to us as well. But we're going to go into a season where, or not a season, I mean a few episodes where we're going to dive into teaching ourselves, wrestle with certain things, certain ideas, concepts, and hopefully we'll get the opportunity to interview more people and maybe this time branch out of FCC.
Yes, absolutely.
We shall see.
I mean, even recently, Lester and I have been part of a new worship pastors and directors network that's just started in our city.
Yes, that is exciting.
So maybe we're going to tap on these guys' shoulders one day and say, come and talk to us.
Yes, and I guess that's going to be really interesting for all you listeners out there, because then you're not just going to get the FCC perspective, but you're going to see how, or rather you're going to see what God is doing across Perth.
That's right, but no promises. We haven't asked them.
Yes, we shall see. Okay, so with today's episode, we're going to talk about the Tabernacle. And I got to say, when I think about this big word of the Tabernacle, I'm not sure about you, but for me, I feel a little daunted. Just kind of thinking about, we have to talk about this, because I don't know, but growing up, it's not something that we really dived into to talk about different elements, to talk about what it represents. I just know roughly where it appeared, what happened, what would happen if you stepped in and you were meant to. But I think you have something on your heart as to why you want to talk about this. So can you explain to us, like, why do you think like the Tabernacle is such an important thing, especially on a worship podcast?
Well, firstly, I think the word tabernacle is very peculiar and is almost peculiar to the Bible. If you weren't a Christian or you hadn't been in the church, you wouldn't really use the word tabernacle in any context.
Yeah, that's true.
But really, it just means tent. So that's easy for us to think about. But it's obviously more than a tent that you pitch when you go camping on the weekend. But the importance of the tabernacle for a worship ministry person is that it represents the presence of God in the midst of his people.
Yep.
And so when you study the tabernacle carefully and you look at its furnishings and the articles, its symbolism, it gives you an idea of an approach to the king, if you like.
Yep.
How do you approach the presence of God?
Yep.
And it sets a protocol which I think informs the way we do modern worship, even if we don't necessarily directly correlate it.
Yep.
But its influences are there. And of course, the principle of biblical interpretation, where you say, the old is in the new concealed, and the new. No, I forget how it goes. But basically, there is that revelation of what is in the Old Testament becomes clear in the New Testament. And so you see this biblical sweep, if you like, which makes you just go, wow, how unified is this body of text?
Yep.
But the other thing is you also see, wow, this really enriches my worship life, because now I can see the significance of what God was doing all the way back in Exodus, for example, fulfilled in the book of Hebrews, for example.
Yep.
And now almost prophetically fulfilled in the life of the modern day church.
Yeah, so just to let you know, because we are going to dive deep to give you a visual of what I'm looking at, we have our Bibles out. I've got a Bible dictionary with me. So there's a bit of studying that's going to happen here. Yes, because we're going to go through a few things. Yeah. Yes, as you were talking about that, I think one thing that comes to mind is that we are able to spot patterns. And that's what we can possibly apply to our current context.
Yes, that's right. And before I look like a fool, the phrase I was thinking of was the new is in the old concealed, and the old is in the new revealed.
And where did that come from?
I don't know, but I'm sure I've heard Pastor Benny say it before.
Okay. All right. Okay, so here we go. Let's walk through, because we talk about tabernacle, and you say that the word tabernacle just means tent. My understanding is that tabernacle actually means something different in the Hebrew. Correct me if I'm wrong. Does it mean dwelling?
Well, you tell me, because I associate it with the simplicity of the idea of a tent. And obviously, tent is dwelling, but it, in one sense, is a temporary dwelling.
Yes. So I think in the Hebrew, Mishkan, I'm pretty sure I'm mispronouncing it, but it comes from the same root word, which means to dwell or to settle. And I think while it might be so similar to a tent, but it shows the intention, right? Like we're no longer just talking about something physical, while it is physical, but we are looking at the intent behind it. Why do you pitch a tent? Why do you build a tabernacle? It's for a dwelling to happen. And in particular, the tabernacle is for God's presence to dwell in the midst of his people.
Yes, and the scriptural anchor here I'll give you is Exodus 29:44. God says, I will sanctify the tent of meeting and the altar. I will also sanctify both Aaron and his sons to minister as priests to me. I will dwell among the children of Israel and be their God. Then they will know that I am the Lord their God who brought them out of the land of Egypt, so that I may dwell among them.
Right.
I am the Lord their God. So this is quite a central theme.
Yeah.
And I suppose for me, we can't just talk about this idea of dwelling without then talking about the presence of God, because when we, in modern worship ministry, even without any precursor, without any context, you step into worship ministry, you know that you're doing something that's affecting or related to the presence of God.
Yes.
It's in our vocabulary and culture and language.
Yeah.
And I think it behooves us to actually understand what we're talking about.
Right.
So that's why I think it's important to study the tabernacle as one of the critical moments, I suppose, in the worship life of Israel.
Yeah. But before we dive further into this, isn't it also a little contentious, because we are speaking to listeners that might span across different denominations, and this idea of talking about the presence of God, I think it's very much, to an extent, Pentecostal language. Now, because some people might say that, well, what do you mean by the presence of God? Because God is currently now in our hearts through the Holy Spirit, or he's omnipresent, right? So when you talk about something like the presence of God, it doesn't make sense to some people, right? So we want to acknowledge that it is contentious. Some people might not fully agree with this approach, but we will hopefully endeavor to talk about what we mean by this presence of God as his manifest presence.
Yes.
Yeah. And I don't know, I feel like over my years of serving, I cannot deny that there are times where you really feel that God has manifested his presence in the midst of the people.
Yes.
And it's not something that's musical, but it's really you feel that the Holy Spirit's in the room.
Yes.
Even though he's always there, right? But all of a sudden, like, you are made aware and you feel it. Yeah.
Yes.
So that's going to be our slant. That's what we're going to be talking about. But we recognize that some people might not agree with this. But hear us out, as we go on this journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess just before you do, a quick thought here, because you and I have been reading about the history of the modern praise and worship movement,
Yes.
right? And I remember you're telling me one day, wait a minute, this entire thing was premised on one singular Bible passage, Psalm 22:3.
Right. Yes.
That says, God inhabits the praises of Israel.
Yes.
And essentially, you're quite right, because I kept reading that text about the history of the movement, and literally it's that key text, and then some further add-ons to that. But essentially, all that we've done for the last 60 or 70 years in modern praise and worship goes back to Psalm 22:3.
Yes, correct. So for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, I think we briefly talked about a book, the history of the history of contemporary praise and worship. And if you actually look at where it all began, it started from someone who took this verse, the one that Lester just said, and basically fleshed it out into, all right, if God inhabits the praises of his people, I know there are different translations as well. Some people interpret it differently. But they go, all right, if he inhabits the praises of his people, we're going to praise just so he is now dwelling amongst us in that sense. So if you're a worshiper listening to this is pretty much the premise on which whatever we currently do in church, what it's built on. So we do have to understand this. Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. Yes, that's a great point.
And just quickly, that book is by Lester Ruth, another Lester.
That's right, Lester Ruth, and a Singaporean guy, I think. Yeah, there's another.
Yes, there was.
Whose name we forget because it wasn't Lester.
Correct.
But before we actually talk about the Tabernacle, I feel like there's something we have to talk about. So we're diving in now, but we want to look at what was it like before the Tabernacle. What was the presence of God like?
Yes. So I guess the first thing for me is you've got the prototype, so to speak, of the Garden of Eden, which is where it all begins.
Yes.
And you've got this picture of God walking in the cool of the evening with Adam.
Yes.
And I would say, even though God is, in fact, the preeminent point is that God is omnipresent, right?
Yes.
So if he's everywhere, one question that comes to mind is, what is he doing walking in a garden with Adam?
That is a great question. I actually never asked myself that. Yeah.
And it makes me think God is more than just an essence.
Yes.
There's a personage about him, a personality about him. And embodiment, so to speak.
Yeah.
So I can't actually quite imagine what that looked like in the Garden of Eden when God was walking with Adam.
Yeah.
But the idea of walking is interesting too, because that's a key theme in the Bible, walking with God. And then the idea that I'm getting is, I'll use the word immediate presence.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a nearness and a closeness where Adam that God's not just a broad universal force, but he's actually conversing, relating, talking.
Yes.
So that for me is the starting point. And if that's the starting point, that's sort of where, and after the temptation and all that and the fall of humankind, we must go, that must be the ideal model for what life must be like as a follower or a devotee of God. Right.
And then, so post Garden of Eden, right? Where else before the Tabernacle? Where else do we see God meeting with people? What comes to mind to you?
There is a passage in Genesis 4, and I don't have it in front of me, but it says, at that time, men began to call upon the name of the Lord. So I'm not sure what that looks like either, but it seems to me that after that, you've got altar building as a manifestation of worship.
But okay, I see what you're getting at. But in those passages, does it mention his immediate presence?
No.
It's just more like a directed kind of worship, right? Like what you're saying. Like they call upon the name of the Lord, they build altars before him, but he's not like physically there.
Yeah. Although, I suppose on occasion,
Yep.
God showed up.
Yes.
In a very physical, immediate sense.
Yes.
So you've got things like Jacob wrestling with God.
Yes.
Although he built the altar after, I think.
Yes.
Confuses me somewhat.
Yeah.
And then you've got Abraham in Genesis 22, and God calls out to him as he's about to build the altar and sacrifice Isaac, and God meets him and says, "Stop."
Yep.
So I think there are several examples where God shows up.
What about the three visitors that come and visit Abraham?
Oh, yes.
Are those angels, or was one of them God himself?
I think it's meant to symbolize God himself.
Right? Yeah. And one thing that strikes me about this is that, yes, God does meet with certain characters, but he is the one who initiates. And so even if you said like, oh, I want to meet with God, you cannot until he decides to show up.
That's a good point.
Yeah. And like, for example, even though they don't really talk about it in the wrestling of Jacob, right? But I am pretty sure it wasn't a case that God was just kind of hanging out somewhere and Jacob just stumbled upon his hiding place. Oh, you found me. But definitely I think God wanted to find Jacob, or he wanted to be found. So I think even then, God is the initiator.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think, to me, in my mind, we have to understand this because he is a sovereign God that says, all right, even if you want to find me, you have to wait until I initiate and look for you. But we realize that this doesn't quite stay the moment the tabernacles come. Or the tabernacle comes. There's only one tabernacle at the start, right? Yeah. When that comes, it kind of flips on its head, because if you want to find God, you know where to find him.
Yes.
Yeah.
And even though the tabernacle is a temporary dwelling,
yes,
and it moved around until we get to David's day.
Yep.
There's an interesting element there where, you say God initiated, but throughout this period between Adam and the tabernacle, it must be a grace, I think, that God still chose to meet with people. Because the problem with Adam was sin came into the world.
Yes.
He wasn't allowed to have that immediate presence anymore.
Yeah.
The cherubim guarded the entrance or the gate to the entrance to the garden.
Yes.
And so essentially there's a banishment. So the fact that God still came and visited people throughout Genesis means there's a grace where he's almost saying, I will overcome my own protocol where sin is a barrier. And he somehow still managed to overcome that sin barrier.
I agree. Now I'm just thinking, like, how would that shape our understanding? Because, like, for example, we would talk about the veil and say that there is a separation because of the sin that we have. Because we have a holy God who is sinless, and we as sinful people, we cannot come into contact with a holy God.
Yeah.
But what about the case of Jacob? That was a full-on wrestle.
Yeah.
Like, and I don't mean to take it too literally, but here we have a sinful person grabbing onto God, and he's not killed.
And he says that I have seen the face of God and I didn't die.
Correct. So how do we understand this?
You know what? I don't know the answer to that, but I would love to go back and hunt up all those references to see if there's anything that the context might reveal.
Yeah.
Was there a secret protocol that we haven't actually found ourselves?
Right. Or is it like what you said, God kind of breaks protocol when he's the initiator? But when we initiate, then there's a separate protocol. I don't know.
Well, that makes sense to me too, because in one sense, God is God.
You are quite right. He can't go, man, I really want to meet with Jacob, but
I can't.
Oh, I can't. Oh, no, right? Yeah. Well, but then again, right, as we're talking about this, I think, in my mind, I'm thinking of the dangers of like just theorizing and speculating. There's a limit to that because we are ultimately finite, and flawed. So we can only tell you what we think, but we're not going to put our eggs in one basket. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a theological minefield we just stepped around.
Yes, we did. Yeah. Okay, so we have that. So we have God initiating through post the fall, and then now we have the tabernacle, right? And like I briefly said, that's where if you wanted to approach God, you knew where he was. You could approach him, but of course, granted, through a priest and sacrifices and stuff. But it wasn't like you had to wait until he showed up.
Yeah.
Right? You knew that he was there. And the one thing that comes to mind is, I think that verse in Jeremiah that says that when you seek me, you'll find me. Like in my mind, right? This is a limitless God, omnipresent, is in heaven. That's not even like a physical space, right? But he's in heaven. But yet he chooses to, in for lack of a better word, like limit himself to one place. Say, I'm here, right here.
Yeah. It is an amazing picture, isn't it? That I mean, we know in the history of the Bible that God chose Israel. Yeah. But he actually chose Israel not only as a people, but he chose Israel as a place where he would dwell. So, through the desert wanderings, he said, I'm going to dwell in the midst of the people, an unclean people, a sinful people, and I'm going to establish a protocol that they can approach me. So we've moved from a place of immediate presence to mediated presence, like what I did there.
I like that. Yeah. Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. I had a train of thought. It just disappeared. Yeah, so when we have the tabernacle, because we're looking at the overview now, how does it shift from this idea of the tabernacle into the next thing? And I believe, wait, hang on. Correct me if I'm wrong. After the tabernacle, we've got different types of tabernacles that come. We've got the tabernacle of David that happens after the tabernacle of Moses, I'm pretty sure. And then after that, because that's that same model in that sense. Would you say it's the same model?
Well, I really love the tabernacle of David. Because it is still the mediated presence of God, right?
Yes, correct.
But it's almost like all the gloves are off. So all this protocol that happened in the tabernacle of Moses suddenly disappears. The animal sacrifices are minimized.
Yep.
The need for blood disappears.
This is a theological minefield.
Well, it is funny, and I haven't got the reference again, but it says that when David brought the Ark of the Covenant back into Jerusalem, he established the musicians around it and offered praise.
Yep.
thanksgiving.
Yep.
And then he left the tabernacle of Moses on Mount Gibeah, which is, I assume that's where they packed it after they settled the land.
Yep.
And certain priests still remain there observing the sacrifices.
Yep.
So you really have a new system of worship, which is actually praise-based.
Right. And can I double check? So by that time, because you have got two tabernacles, you got a tabernacle of Moses, you got a tabernacle of David. Where was the ark?
In the tabernacle of David.
Okay. Yep. Yep.
Which, I mean, is significant, though, because one thing the ark is it signifies the presence of God.
Correct.
Using the terminology I've just said, I suppose we call it the mediated presence of God, the mediation now through praise. And it's very clear that the Shekinah glory dwelt there. But it was out in the open because there were no walls in the tabernacle of David. There was a tent just pitched on top of the Ark of the Covenant.
Right. And so when we think about that time, even then, there was a manifest presence of God, right?
Yes.
There was the, I think in Exodus, right? It says in chapter 40, verse 34. So then the cloud covered the tent of meeting, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. Moses couldn't enter the tent of meeting because the cloud had settled on it. And the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. In all the travels of the Israelites, whenever the cloud lifted from above the tabernacle, they would set out. But if the cloud did not lift, they did not set out until the day it lifted. So the cloud of the Lord was over the tabernacle by day, and fire was in the cloud by night in the sight of all the Israelites during their travels. And so I think this reinforces to me that there are different levels of that presence.
Yes.
Yeah, this, like, the idea of a cloud is one that's more tangible, if I could say. Yeah. From here, how does this model change? So we are at the tabernacle of Moses and David. How does it change?
So then it goes into the Temple of Solomon.
Yep.
What I found interesting as I've been reading recently about the Temple of Solomon, it's probably around 2 Chronicles 6-ish. It actually says that they did both things. So I'm not sure what the significance of it but they did both things. In other words, he slaughtered a lot of animals.
Okay.
A lot of animals.
Yeah.
In fact, they said there was so much slaughter, I think it was 22,000 or something like that, that they had to move to a different part of the temple courtyard. But then on the other side of the courtyard, there were the musicians singing and playing music and praising. So it's almost like they brought both of it together. So when you look and talk about something else in a moment, I'll try to find that for you, because I just found that interesting why they merged the two again.
Right. It almost brings to mind a question of, was it necessary? I don't know. I'm just thinking about like how you would be singing and you'd have like the bleating of like sheep just in the background as you're trying to sing.
Well, it is a hot mess, I would think.
Yeah, if you say 22,000, that would take a long time to kill those animals. Unless you had like a fast way of doing it.
I'd rather be the priest playing the trumpet, to be honest.
Or the shofar.
Yeah.
Yes. I've got something to talk about, but I feel like that would come after what you want to say, so.
Yes. I'm not sure I can find it, but it does say in at least 2 Chronicles 5, verse 11, as all the priests who were there had consecrated themselves regardless of their divisions, and all the Levites who were musicians, Asaph, Heman, Jeduthun, and their sons and relatives, stood on the east side of the altar, dressed in fine linen and playing cymbals, harps, and lyres. They were accompanied by 120 priests sounding trumpets. The trumpeters and the singers joined in unison as with one voice, to give praise and thanks to the Lord, accompanied by trumpets, cymbals, and other instruments. They raised their voices in praise to the Lord and sang, "He is good, His love endures forever." And I'm sure the animal sacrifices were happening at the same time. I'll find that if I can find it, I'll tell you.
Okay.
Oh yeah, sorry. Just earlier in verse 4. When all the elders had arrived, the Levites took up the ark, and they brought up the ark and the tent of meeting and all the sacred furnishings in it. The priests who were Levites carried them up, and King Solomon and the entire assembly of Israel that had gathered about him were before the ark, sacrificing so many sheep and cattle that they could not be recorded or counted. So, sorry, it wasn't 22,000.
It was probably more.
Yeah. Although I'm pretty sure I saw that number somewhere else. But anyway, this is telling you both was happening.
Yeah.
And then just to end the point that you had made earlier, at the end of chapter 5, it says, Then the temple of the Lord was filled with a cloud, and the priests could not perform their service because of the cloud, for the glory of the Lord filled the temple of God.
Right.
So again, the manifest presence happens.
So this is the picture of what happened in the Old Testament. And basically whatever you just described in Solomon's temple kind of stayed all the way through until the New Testament. Am I right to say? Did it change?
Well, it's interesting to me because I would imagine that it did remain, because the prophets later on. So we don't really have a reference to this much anymore until I think we get some reference to it in Nehemiah's time, when they put the musicians back as they were rebuilding rebuilding Jerusalem.
Yeah.
But you don't actually see much of what happens in temple worship.
Yes.
From then on, because a lot of the Psalms were written in the days of David.
Yep.
And they describe what happens in temple worship.
Yep.
In tabernacle worship.
Yep.
And then you've got all these other kings who are doing stuff and getting to wars and stuff, and some prophets telling them off.
Yeah.
But you do get references even in, for example, Amos, where he says, "Away with the noise of your songs."
Yeah.
So there is an element there where I think the music was still going on. Whether the heart was in it was a different question.
Yes. The verse in Amos is the one that says that I despise your festivals and whatnot. Is that right? Yeah. Okay. I know what you're talking about. Yeah, so we don't really have a lot of reference to whether or not things continued. We can only kind of assume it continued. But like you said, whether or not the heart was in it, we don't know.
Yeah. And in one sense, what we then had after the exile was the rise of the synagogue. So biblical historians tell us that obviously without the temple, there was no longer a site for communal all-in worship.
Yep.
And so in Babylon, in Assyria, the faithful would gather together in common places.
Yep.
And that gave rise to the synagogue. And so in the synagogue, we lost all the musical elements of worship. And a lot of it was now centered around the word.
Right. So a synagogue is a place where the teaching of the word happens. Is there anything in the Bible from our reading where it mentions the presence of God being in a synagogue?
Not that I can think of.
Not that I recall as well. I'm not saying that God's against like synagogues and stuff like that, but
And Bible reading.
no. Oh! Of course he's not against that. Oh my goodness. But yeah, I think it's worth noting that his manifest presence is recorded thus far based off memory, right? Only in the temple or the tabernacle. right? And that's when the tabernacle first got instituted.
Yeah.
But then things begin to change in the New Testament.
Yes.
And I read from John chapter 1, verse 14.
Yes.
It says, "The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son who came from the Father, full of grace and truth." But this first bit, the Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. So you can almost say, because we established, right, that the word tabernacle doesn't just mean tent, but it also means to dwell. So you could almost say that the Word became flesh and tabernacled among us.
Yeah.
Right? So we have all of a sudden now this tabernacle in the form of a person. And it makes sense because this is God himself in the flesh
Yes.
with us.
And almost, I mean, this blows my mind, right? You just read essentially that glory, that massive pillar of fire and cloud, all that awe-inspiring stuff that people could see from far and near, condensed into one body form.
Yeah.
And it was all in Jesus. And yeah, that blows my mind, actually.
You know, as I was reading that verse and I was thinking about the implications of it, why are we then surprised? You know how we talked about how Jacob could wrestle with God even though he was sinful.
Mm.
Jesus was God himself, but he constantly came into contact with sinful people.
Yes.
But they were instructed, or he could come into contact with us.
Yes. It's almost like the law was reversed. So part of what I can't understand is how that works. Because the law in Leviticus and in Exodus really teaches that if you make contact with an unclean person or an unclean thing, you become unclean.
Yes, correct. And that's logical, right? Yeah.
That's right. Because if I have a clean plate and I put it in a dirty dishwasher with other unclean
the dishwasher is clean now.
Okay, try that. But it's true. Even if it doesn't touch it, I'm just going to take out that plate and wash it again, right?
Yeah.
Because it just the fumes, the aura of grossness has touched it.
Yeah.
So the unclean makes the clean dirty.
Yes.
But yet, when Jesus comes on the scene, the clean makes the unclean clean.
Oh, yikes. That's almost what happens with Jacob, too.
Yeah.
He has this like pivotal kind of destiny kind of reversal kind of thing where he's a deceiver. He has been wrestling, constantly fighting for his own destiny, for his own future, the outcome. Everything's always like, he's a self-made man in that sense, right? He has to rely on himself. But all of a sudden now, like, God touches him and his destiny is made new. Names changed. You're now Israel.
Yeah. And that's exactly what happens in the New Testament. Jesus touches, well, actually, the woman with the issue of blood, unclean for 12 years, touches Jesus, made clean. The leper, made clean. The blind beggar, made clean. The demon-possessed man, made clean. So,
you see, when you talk about the woman with the issue of blood, right? I think back to the concept of how, because all the other healings, more or less, Jesus is the one initiating. But the woman is the one where she initiates.
Yes.
But still, the outcome is the same in that sense. Like, he doesn't go like, nah, I'm not going to allow that to happen. Like, it has to be on my terms. But she still has access to that healing.
Yeah.
Even though she's initiating.
Mm.
Wow.
It just blows my mind.
Yeah. To me, when I think about these things, and as you're listening to this, maybe you can think along with us. What kind of God is this? That he would allow this, right? Because I could almost imagine that if you were godlike, that I would rather be snobbish to say like, hey, I am the Almighty One, right? Sure, you need stuff. Sure, I'll help you. But you wait, right? And I'll be the one to come whenever I'm ready.
Yeah.
But he makes himself available to us sinful people. He says, I'm gonna not just make myself available, I'm gonna dwell with you, be a part of you. So much so that when you come into contact with me, you are transformed. Like what you said, right? The unclean touching the clean, and now you're made clean. What kind of God is this? Because I think there is no other faith, religion that paints a picture of a God like this. Huh.
With just one touch.
Yeah.
It's not even, mutter these sayings for like a period of years or meditate on this for a long time, give all these things up and live a pure life for a while to reach any state of special status or holiness.
Wow.
This is a God who says, I'll do it first.
Yeah. And I'm having a thought as I think about what then happens next, because we know that when Jesus ascends to heaven, he basically tells the disciples, right, hey, don't worry, it's going to get better because now you'll receive the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
Right. And of course, that changes because now that tabernacling is not just one person, but he comes to the tabernacle within us. Comes to dwell within us because we are now the temple of the Holy Spirit and he dwells with us. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm gonna say something that's on my mind. It almost seems like since the start of the first tabernacle that the barriers are coming down.
Yeah.
At the start, it was as fierce and as dangerous as, hey, you offer, uncensored fire? Or was that it? The sons of Aaron?
Unauthorized
fire. Yeah. Unauthorized fire, boom, you struck it. You're touching the Ark of the Covenant, boom, you struck it.
Yeah.
And I get that. I fully understand that. But then all of a sudden you move into like what you said, the Tabernacle of David, where it almost seems like the killing, is that necessary? I don't know. And now it comes to Jesus, right? And there's no more killing to be made apart from the biggest sacrifice of all, Jesus on the cross for us. And then now we have the Holy Spirit with us, and it's like the barriers have come down. That's what I'm seeing.
Yeah. Absolutely. Actually, I'm just, I know we all know this and we've known this for a long time, but I'm pretty amazed.
Yeah, because if we see this, I think really the next question to ask ourselves is why? Why would God do that? Wouldn't you at least say, I'm going to maintain my standards, right? To say, you know what? No, even right now, we need to like sacrifice who knows how many goats or whatever, like lambs or whatever, for whatever sins. But he almost says, all right, there are barriers, but I'm the one that's clearing out these barriers, coming closer and closer to you, until I can be one with you again. To me, it shows me the heart of God.
Yes.
That says that he wants us to commune with him.
Yes.
To be in fellowship with him. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm thinking a lot of things. It's so much. It's really hard to take in. I wish I can synthesize it all, but I see the tabernacle as a creature of the law, and it's if you actually think about it, we've got a big chunk of Exodus, which is God delivering the law, and that includes other bits of the law, like how people relate to one another, and you've got the Ten Commandments, and then you've got this massive chunk, chapter 25 to 40, which is all about the the tabernacle, and how it's to be built, and the services and the offerings and that sort of thing. And that it is a lawful meeting place of God.
Yep.
But even embedded within this lawful meeting place, you've got articles like the Ark of the Covenant, which the word is the law sitting, or the tablets of stone where the law was delivered, sitting inside the box and covered by the mercy seat. So there's this idea of grace already emerging right from the beginning. And then Jesus' tabernacle's full of grace and truth. And you've got grace and law now sort of merging together in the one place, the one person. And it's almost like it's a culmination of where God had always intended it. I just wonder why it took that long. But I mean, putting that aside, because I have questions about why it took that long, but putting that aside, to see that progression as you've described it, the walls coming down, the barriers lowering, this change actually just blows my mind. Like, it just makes me go, wow.
And we're not here to say that, hey, like, go ahead, be as frivolous as you want, right? The walls are coming down, like, who cares? Like, there are no standards. But this is where I recall what Jesus said about, I have not come to abolish the law, but I've come to fulfill it.
Yeah.
The law is still there, but he has come to fulfill it in that sense, in my mind. And brother, you correct me if I'm wrong here, because in my mind, I'm thinking he has come to fulfill the law. Sounds like he's taking down those walls personally. So the law's there, but he has fulfilled that law so that we can approach him with grace.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. And one day we will study the book of Hebrews, because I think the book of Hebrews is the clearest book of the Bible that does this. But if you look at the themes of it, it's we have a better priest. We have a better sacrifice. We have a better tabernacle.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm actually quite dumbfounded. I'm dumbfounded in the sense that this is not new, but it feels new again.
Yes. I guess that's the beauty of it, right? We cannot afford to be desensitized to these things, but it's very refreshing that we continually get amazed. I have that sense of awe and wonderment. What an amazing God we serve. Wow. So, all right. Next logical question in my head then is, if we see this progression, and then we ask ourselves, why? What kind of God is this? Why would he do that? My next question is, what should our response then be?
Well, at least Hebrews 11 or 10. Hebrews 10 tells us to approach now the throne of grace with confidence.
Yep.
Yes, it is 10. 10:19. Therefore, brothers, since we have confidence to enter the most holy place by the blood of Jesus, by a new and living way open for us through the curtain that is his body, and since we have a great high priest over the house of God, let us draw near to God with a sincere heart and full assurance of faith, having our hearts sprinkled to cleanse us from a guilty conscience, and having our bodies washed with pure water. Okay, I want to say a couple of things about this. verse 22 says, "Let us draw near to God." And so this is puzzling for me too. So we've got God omnipresent.
Yes.
We've got God immediate presence. We've got God mediated presence. We've got God manifested presence.
Yep.
And then this is saying, draw near to God. And I guess the way we answer this really has implications for us as worship ministers too.
Yep. Why do we still need to draw near? If God is everywhere, right?
Yeah.
What does it mean to draw near if we have the Holy Spirit that's already within us?
Yeah.
What does that look like?
Yeah. And one thing we did miss was 1 Corinthians 3 or 13. Do you have a reference for that where it says, don't you know, 1 Corinthians 3:16, don't you know that you yourselves are God's temple?
Yes. I think I said that in passing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And God's Spirit dwells in you. So you did mention that. That's our reference. So here we are. We are the tabernacles now, and yet we're asked to draw near.
I get this picture of us being the tabernacles, but we're just kind of just casually sitting outside, like twiddling our thumbs, like, come on in! Wow. I don't know. I have to ask you this. I didn't expect what these few pointers that we talk about to take so long. Should we leave our listeners on a cliffhanger and say, come back for our next episode? What do you think? Because we want to talk about this, and there was a deeper question of what's the implication then for us as worship, or as music worship people, right? What do you reckon?
Leave it to next one.
Yeah, I reckon let's leave it to the next one. But let's sum this up, right? So in this episode, we actually just looked at like the idea of the presence of God, which is closely linked with the tabernacle and dwelling. And we looked at the history of, and of course, very briefly, right, from Genesis all the way through to New Testament now that we have the Holy Spirit. And we get to see basically a pattern. And we, I mean, Leslie and I were in awe, just thinking of what that pattern means, what it means as to how it informs us about who our God is, his heart, right? The fact that he would kind of, in that sense, limit himself or take the initiative, right? Just so we can have fellowship with him. What's his heart? Yeah, I think this shows us a picture of a God who is absolutely loving, all-powerful, but one who definitely loves us, his people. Yeah. He's not a God who's lofty and says, I'm going to keep my distance from you sinful people. But he says, I'm going to make steps to come to you.
Yeah.
Wow. Incredible. Okay. All right, with that, hey, I mean, if you're in the room with us, it feels like time hasn't passed that much, but yeah, we appreciate you listening in on this one. Lester, you look like you have something to say.
No, it just felt like a holy moment.
Hey, it is. Like, I think, even though, like what you said, we know these things, but all of a sudden, I think it just hit us like, wow. Like, wow, how amazing is our God. Yeah. We appreciate you listening in with us. We definitely hope that you can tune in for the next one because we're continuing on with this idea. We don't want to have too long an episode. Yeah, so we're going to cut it here. Please tune in for the next one. We appreciate you. If you have been tuning in with us and you're blessed by something, please feel free to comment. Let us know what has blessed your heart. If you have any thoughts, that you just want to add on and yeah, just be a blessing to the community that's reading the comments. Please do. Otherwise, like, follow, subscribe if you haven't already. And we will see you on the next one.
Bye for now.